Well, hello everybody at YouTube, and I am Michael Buckoff, the founder, owner, and the materials writer for all of your lessons at the 7-step system to pass a TOEFL iBT. I have about 15 minutes right now, and I want to do a quick live stream on the TOEFL iBT reading question. It's called How to Infer Rhetorical Purpose. So in this particular video, I will talk about what this kind of question is, how you can answer this kind of question, and probably the most important thing is when you're reading passages, what kinds of questions can you ask when you're reading that help you think about the reading passage on a more rhetorical level. That's kind of what I'm going to try to get you guys to understand here. So first of all, you'll notice I have two useful links here in the live chat. One of them, if you want to learn more about my online TOEFL course, you can go here. It's called onlinetoeflcourse.com. Secondly, the lesson that you're going to hear right now or watch, it comes from my blog, Better TOEFL Scores. You can click on that link to get that particular lesson. Alright? Okay, so now let's take a look at the lesson now. So I'm just going to put this over here. And now let's add a source. Okay, we have it right here. Okay, let's take a look at it right now. Okay, I wrote this lesson a couple years back. Okay, let's get started. And you guys can read along with me if you want. So, you're taking the TOEFL iBT and the following question arises. Why does the author include the information that dinosaurs had flourished for tens of millions of years and suddenly disappeared? Or you read, why does the author use the word however in the fourth paragraph? These types of rhetorical questions, in which you're required to infer rhetorical purpose, dumbfound some TOEFL iBT test takers. How the heck do I know? These test takers claim, while the author is doing anything. But you can and you must know if you want to answer these questions correctly. Okay, so let's take a look at how you can answer this type of question. So to answer this question, you should identify the thesis and the topic sentences of the reading passage so that you understand how the passage is organized. It is also important to understand if the passage fits into a specific organizational pattern, such as compare and contrast, cause-effect, narration, or steps in a process. So if you're looking for the thesis, it may be in the first, right in the beginning of the introduction. It could be in the second paragraph, but here's a good tip. Once you've identified the thesis, if you're not sure whether or not it is a thesis, look through the first line of all the body paragraphs and see if there's a connection. If the answer is no, then you should probably keep looking for the thesis of that reading passage. So what do? So first, consider where this information is mentioned. So if they ask you this question in the first line, for example, of the second paragraph, consider how the information is related to the thesis of the first paragraph. For instance, does it provide a supporting point for the thesis? Now, if they ask you this question in the first line of any remaining paragraphs, consider how the information fits into the topic of the previous paragraph and into the passage as a whole. For example, does it add? Does it contradict the topic of the previous paragraph? If you're asked this question in the last line of any remaining paragraphs, consider how the information is related to the topic of that paragraph. Or perhaps the author might be transitioning to a new idea in the next paragraph. Right? So these are some general ideas of some things that you should think about. Now, what I want to do next is I'm going to take a look at a reading passage right now, and I'm going to give you some ideas on how you can think about the reading on a more rhetorical level. Remember, some types of questions on the TOEFL, they are more what questions? They're asking you some content, they want you to know ideas, how things are, what is being said, and so on. But this particular question, it's really asking you more about how the writer is doing certain things. All right, so what I want to do now is let's take a look at a reading passage. I'm going to find it right now. And you can find reading passages all over the internet. No joke, they're everywhere. Right? So this one particularly, I want to share this one with you for a couple of reasons. For example, we are celebrating right now, I think on Monday, we celebrated Martin Luther King holiday, right? Give me a quick second here. So this is one of the most famous speeches ever in American culture. It is considered a great piece of writing. It was an incredible speech given to over 200,000 people back in 1963. And I want to illustrate how you could read this rhetorically, right? So I'm trying to show you when you're reading the kinds of things you want to do in order to read rhetorically. Okay, so in this paragraph, I have a question here. It says, why does King use the phrase, a great beacon of hope? Here, right? So if you're asked this kind of question, you have to look at what this refers to, right? So this idea, a great beacon light of hope, this is a very positive thing. It refers back to this momentous decree, and this decree refers back to the Emancipation Proclamation. This was a law that President Lincoln, he got passed, that freed all slaves in the United States back in the 1860s. Right? So then, anytime you answer this kind of question, the TOEFL, it'll say something like this. It'll say to something, right? So here, why does he use the phrase, the great beacon of hope, to show, you might say, to show why you might say something like this. So in this case, by saying a great beacon of hope and referring it back to this, notice how the writer uses the word as, or King uses as. This is what we call a simile. So it's going back to Emancipation Proclamation, and he's trying to illustrate why this was an important law for African Americans. Right? So again, if you think about why and not just what, that helps you understand more about how to read rhetorically. And if you can read rhetorically as you practice your reading, you'll do much better with this type of reading question on the TOEFL iBT. Here's another one. Why does King use the comparison a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity? So if you look, it says here, 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. So then you say something like this. So to illustrate how So in this case, if you looked at this one, why does King use a comparison of lonely island poverty? Obviously, he's trying to illustrate the condition. Notice at the end of the paragraph, we've come here to dramatize a shameful condition. So he's trying to show how African Americans' lives are not as prosperous as others in society. Right? So typically with the TOEFL, usually when you're looking at this answer, it'll say something like to illustrate or to show or to explain. Let me give you another one. Why does King use the word but in this paragraph, right? The TOEFL could say but, it could say however, it could say therefore, whatever. In this case, you have to look at this word and you have to see, because it's the very first word in the paragraph, how does it relate to what came before? Right? In the previous paragraph, it's kind of negative. It says, instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check. A check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. Right? So in this case, you might have something like this: to show contrasting points between the two paragraphs. Obviously, if you're using a word like but, or however, or in contrast, the writer's trying to show how two ideas are different. Right? That would be something that you would think about. Now, if the writer uses therefore, then that's showing more cause-effect. Let's see if I can give you another one here, like this one here. This is a tough one. So why does King use the word for in this particular paragraph? Very long sentence, right? So it says, the marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. So the word for here, it's actually not a preposition, believe it or not. The word for here is a conjunction. Right? So then, you might say, illustrate a cause, maybe effect, relationship between the two ideas in the sentence. So in this case, we can probably look at this idea. The word for here, it's very formal, but the writer's definitely using this as cause-effect. That's kind of the purpose of this type of connection. Okay, hold on, I'll be right back. So what I'm doing right here is, I'm just trying to illustrate to you guys at YouTube that it takes practice, and different kinds of reading questions can be more or less difficult, but if you're preparing and you're doing reading practice every day, and if you want to do the rhetorical type reading practice, that's probably how you could do it. At least those are some things that you can do, I think, that will be effective in helping you answer this kind of question. So again, this is called rhetorical purpose, right? Usually why the writer is doing certain things in the actual reading passage. Let me see if I can find one more example here for you. Hold on. So let me go back. I'm going to give you one more here. Okay, here's one. Okay, so let's look at one more here. Okay, so it says here, it says, why does King use the words narrow jail cells, police brutality, and veterans of creative suffering? So in this case, you have to kind of look at these different things and then think how they relate back maybe to the purpose of the paragraph. So it says here, let's look at the whole paragraph for a second. says, I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi, go back to Alabama, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. So why does King use these specific words here, right? So if you look at the very beginning, if you look at the topic sentence here, and remember that typically writers, they start with more general ideas and then they typically will get more specific as they go, right? So then in this case, you can probably say that he's using these to give examples of trials and tribulations that some African Americans have had to endure, right? So then you would say something like this, to give examples of difficult, you might say, circumstances that African Americans have had to endure. You see what we're saying here? So this would, again, be how you would answer a rhetorical type question. Notice here, and the TOEFL does this quite often, instead of saying trials and tribulations, I said to give examples of difficult circumstances. Difficult circumstances is similar to trials and tribulations. So I think by using narrow jail cells and police brutality and veterans of creative suffering, it kind of relates to this idea. You guys see what we're saying? So again, as you improve your reading and you're pretty good at getting main ideas, don't forget what's called the rhetorical question, right? Infer rhetorical purpose. This is one of the kinds of questions that you can certainly be asked on the TOEFL iBT exam. And if you can think of it, if you can think of your reading passages like this, and as you're reading passages, if you can start thinking about why the writer is doing what the writer is doing, this will really help prepare you for this type of test question. All right? So everybody at YouTube, thank you for watching this, and thank you for your support of my channel. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And also, if you're looking for an online TOEFL course, I have what you're looking for. And unlike courses like Magoosh, the TOEFL iBT online course, Noteful, and many other courses, you can actually complete speaking and writing practice tests. You can send them to me, and I will comment on them and help you improve both your speaking and writing. So you will get feedback. All right? You guys have a good day.